Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Youth Voices for Global Gender Equity, in conversation with AAUW's UN Youth Representatives. I'm Gloria Blackwell, AAUW's Chief Executive Officer and our UN Main Representative. This program that we are carrying out today is being recorded, and it will be available on our website at aauw.org. We also want to remind you that you can use the Q&A feature if you have any questions for our speakers. We do know that many of you did pre-submit questions. Thank you so much for your thoughtful questions. And many of them have been woven into the conversation. So I want to get started with an introduction and today's agenda. The opening of the 78th session of the UN General Assembly last month and commemoration of UN Day just yesterday underscored the critical urgency to accelerate action on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, including gender equality, quality education, and decent work for all. Barriers still keep access to education, economic security, and leadership out of reach for millions of girls and women around the world. The world currently holds the largest generation of young people in our history, 1.2 billion youth ages 15 to 24, which is 16% of the global population. And today, youth participation at the United Nations continues to expand with the growing recognition that the perspective of young people, particularly young women and girls, are critical to achieving sustainable, inclusive, and equitable global development outcomes. AAUW is committed to supporting and elevating the voices of youth at the United Nations and in the movement for global gender equity through our United Nations Youth Representative Program, which we'll share more about in today's webinar. First, to set some of the groundwork for today's conversation, I'd like to share a brief overview of AAUW's global initiatives and work with United Nations and civil society. We know that for women around the world, funding can be key to access education. And AAUW is proud to have awarded fellowships and grants to over 13,000 women pursuing advanced degrees and community-based projects focused on equity and education for girls in more than 150 countries. And this year is our biggest year of awards ever, with $6.3 million awarded to the current class of fellowship and grant recipients. AAUW has been proud to feature our outstanding fellowships and grants alumni in our global issue webinars, most recently hosting a discussion with alumna Dr. Laura Dean on ending global human trafficking in commemoration of World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. In addition, AAUW works to advance equity for women and girls around the world through our engagement with the United Nations and in civil society spaces. We are a proud co-founder and member of the Working Group on Girls, a committee of NGOs that works for and with girls to advance their rights, inclusion, and status through UN engagement. The Girls Speak Out event on International Day of the Girl earlier this month centered and uplifted the voices, the lived experiences, and the powerful insights of girl advocates on the theme of investing in girls' leadership and well-being. AAUW holds special consultative status with the UN Economic and Social Council, through which we attend briefings, organize events, and participate in coalitions to take action on issues that impact girls and women, including access to education and training, leadership, women's economic security, opportunities in STEM, and ending human trafficking, in line with our public policy and advocacy work. Just last month, we were at the United Nations for a Civil Society Action Weekend ahead of the Sustainable Development Goals Summit, which brought together advocates and leaders from across the globe, including youth and young women and girls, to accelerate progress toward the 2030 Agenda and achievement of its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Each spring, AAUW attends the session of the UN Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. Organized by UN Women, the Commission brings together UN entities, member states, and civil society groups to discuss progress towards global gender equality and the empowerment of women, and to commit to further actions to make equality a reality for all. AAUW also hosts yearly events as part of the parallel NGO Committee on the Status of Women Forum that contributes to these efforts. Last year's insightful panel event featured 3 of AAUW's amazing Fellowships and Grants alumni to discuss strategies to close the global gender digital divide, particularly in the education and STEM fields. I encourage everyone to check out the webinar recording of that discussion and all of our global events on AAUW's website. Lastly, at our headquarters in Washington, D.C., we host fellows and professional groups from around the world, including those from Latin America, Haiti, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Moldova, Turkey, Israel, Tunisia, and more. Through the U.S. State Department's Professional Fellows Program, the International Visitor Leadership Program, and others. This past month, we were honored to host a group of highly accomplished women in manufacturing, tech, and automobile industries in Japan, who shared valuable knowledge and experiences in our discussion of pay equity, STEM education, and advancing women's leadership. And of course, we must acknowledge the global work undertaken by our amazing AAUW affiliate branches across the country for over a century under the leadership of state and branch program and international affairs chairs. Now that I've set the stage, I'm so pleased that joining us today are AAUW's partners and UN youth representatives from Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. Elena Reiss is the Assistant Director of Fellowship Advising and UN Programs and Manager of the UN Youth Representative Program at Lehigh. With 2 decades of experience working with multicultural populations in the U.S. and abroad, she promotes intercultural competence in the greater Lehigh Valley community through teacher training, professional workshops, and conferences. Elena is passionate about creating an equitable community and supporting professional development and multilingual learners and their assimilation into an academic environment. Welcome, Elena. Zahra Hassan is a junior at Lehigh University, majoring in political science and sociology with a minor in French. She is from East Lyme, Connecticut, and has always had a passion for equity for women, which she hopes to advance through her work with AAUW. She has served as an intern for the Lehigh Valley Justice Institute and conducted research last summer on the psychology of white nationalism. She also served as Vice President of Programming of UNA Lehigh and is now President of the Lehigh Campus Branch of AAUW. Zahra is dedicated to equity for all and advancing this in the international politics field. And joining us also is Kyra Szabo, a junior at Lehigh University as well, who is double majoring in global studies and environmental science. At Lehigh, Kyra is a global social impact fellow working on food production to fight malnutrition and stunted growth in Sierra Leone. Kyra is dedicated to ensuring that every person, no matter their gender or socioeconomic status, is given equal access and opportunities for success. Please join me in welcoming Elena, Zahra, and Kyra. I'd now like to invite Elena to share more about the UN Youth Representative Program at Lehigh University and their partnership with AAUW. Elena, over to you.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you so much for inviting us here today. It's a pleasure and an honor to speak to all of you. As Gloria said, my name is Elena Reiss. I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Fellowship Advising and United Nations Partnerships at Lehigh, and I manage the Lehigh United Nations Youth Representative Program. I'm also the official representative of Lehigh to the United Nations. Lehigh Youth Representative Program started in 2008, And this was the world's first program of its kind. And I'm proud to say that even now, we're still the only program of its kind in the world. So what we do is the Lehigh UN Youth Representative Program matches UN accredited NGOs with high achieving undergraduate and graduate students who serve as that NGO's voice at the United Nations. We currently work with 10 different partners that are located on 6 continents, and we focus on a wide range of issues, including environmental sustainability, gender equity, social justice, LGBT rights, global health, international peace, and many, many more. In this program, these representatives meet with global decision makers. They also participate in international conferences, moderate briefings, write written statements for their NGOs, and in any other way serve as the NGO's voice at the UN. We've also had youth representatives speak on the floor of the General Assembly and other conferences and advocate on a variety of platforms related to the agenda at the UN and worldwide. And so really what my goal with this program has been over the past couple of years is to not just give students an opportunity to participate in those experiential learning opportunities, but also develop valuable skills such as networking, diplomacy, communication skills, presentation skills, and so on. And so as a part of cohort, right now we have 24 youth representatives in the cohort overall. As a part of cohort, the youth reps are expected to attend very regular meetings. And very often those meetings are seminars or workshops that are related to some of these skills. We've also partnered up with the career services at Lehigh, and so we're doing a lot of workshops that are related to how to articulate all of those accomplishments in their future employment documents, LinkedIn, and other platforms as well. I am very grateful for the relationship, for the longstanding relationship that we have with AAUW as one of our partners in this program. And I can say that AAUW has been one of the strongest partners as well. What we value most of all in the partnership in general is, first of all, regular communication. So the ability of the NGO to stay on top of communicating with these representatives. And I can say that the AAUW is certainly one of the strongest partners there with very regular communications from both Gloria and Kalina in terms of updating the students on the opportunities, making sure that all the deadlines are met and so on. So that is very, very helpful when we have that kind of a connection. And of course, it helps that the AAUW is located in the United States, so we don't have to worry about the time differences and some of the other cultural communication challenges that we face with some of the other NGOs too. But another thing that we appreciate very much is the opportunities that the AAUW provides. And I'm not going to go too deeply into that because I would like for Zahra and Kyra to talk more about their own experiences. But we value the type of opportunities that these representatives for AAUW have in connecting with the United Nations. I do want to mention that Lehigh UN Youth Rep program is highly competitive. So it's not always easy to become a youth rep. It is a process that requires interview and some of the other documents, including recommendation letters. So in order to become a Lehigh youth rep, the students do have to show that they have had other accomplishments in other areas as well. And like I said, I would like to give Zahra and Kyra more opportunity to talk about their own experiences, but I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the program in general.
Thank you so much, Elena. You know that AAUW is incredibly grateful for your team and for our longstanding partnership with Lehigh. We benefit from the partnership, certainly, as much as you all. And we definitely appreciate the commitment that Lehigh has to the Youth Representative Program at the United Nations. So thank you very much. So now I'd like to invite Zahra and Kyra to tell us a bit more about yourselves and why you're interested in this global work, and dive into our conversation. So I want to start first. Zahra, can you introduce yourself to our participants?
Yeah, of course. Hello, everyone. My name is Zahra Hassan. I've been a youth rep for the AAUW since my sophomore year, so it's been a little over a year now. And it has been an incredible experience. I remember I heard about the youth rep program before I even applied to Lehigh, and it was something that I was immediately interested in, given that I came in as a political science major going into the international politics route. So being able to be actively engaged with the UN was such a interesting experience for me. And it has been great so far, not only being able to go to the UN and attend meetings there and visit there often, but also engaging with AAUW as well and being able to go to their local branch meetings or go to conferences across states lines. And it's really just been amazing. And I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful to have you as one of our youth representatives. Kyra,
Hi,
tell us about
okay.
you.
Yeah, so my name is Kyra Szabo, and I have also been a UN youth rep with AAUW since the beginning of my sophomore year. And I am super passionate about addressing local and global challenges associated with gender equality, all across different cultures and societies. So I believe that through my global studies degree that I'm getting, I can gain insight into these diverse gender dynamics. And through the AAUW, I can contribute to a more equitable world and to a broader range of perspectives towards the UN and to AAUW. And it's been so great so far.
Great. So tell us a bit more about your engagement with AAUW and the UN over the past year or so.
Yes.
Kyra.
Okay, yeah. So so far with the AAUW, Zahra and I have co-founded the Lehigh University chapter of the AAUW. So we've started getting that up and running this semester, and it's been a really amazing experience. But to promote the AAUW's mission, we organize many workshops and seminars throughout our school to educate youth about gender equality, women's rights, and related issues. So these include workshops on leadership and empowerment to equip young women with the tools to navigate the professional world. And we engage with local communities as well to understand their unique challenges and to work on tailored solutions with them, and to also gain networking for all of our women that are just getting started in their careers.
Excellent. Anything you want to add to that, Zahra?
Yeah, I would agree. I've been to some extraordinary events over the past year. I can just list off a couple, but I was able to go to AEW's networking reception last spring, I believe. And that was an amazing experience, just being able to engage with fellowship recipients of AUW. And I hadn't met any before, so it was really great to be able to see the impact that AUW has on people. I met so many women that came from across the country or across even the world that were so grateful to AUW and really dedicated much of their success to AUW. So that was such an amazing experience. And then also I was able to attend a AUW conference called Nick Whistle last spring as well. And that was also an extraordinary experience where I engaged with like-minded college students who had similar passions to me. And in there, I learned so much from so many important workshops held by women, so much engaging bond building and activities for us to participate in. And yeah, through those experiences over the past year, I've really just learned about the impact that AUW has, learned about the value of their mission, and been able to connect with the organization.
That's great. And for those who don't know, NICWSL is our National Conference for College Women Student Leaders, affectionately referred to as NICWSL. Thanks. I'm glad to hear that positive feedback about NICWSL because it really is a great conference. So for both of you, is there a particular UN event that you engaged in that you'd like, that had an impact on you that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I can start. I remember I went to the UN once for their International Women of Girls in Science Day. And that was definitely one of the most memorable trips that I had because I actually met with Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Iraq. And we got a picture with her. We even had her put on a little Lehigh pin. So that was so exciting. And just hearing her speak about her passions from across the world was so interesting. She had a lot to say for sure. And hearing about her contributions to her organization as well. Everyone in the room was so delighted to hear her speak. And that was definitely a memorable experience of mine.
That's great. What about you, Kyra?
Yeah, I would say that just getting to present at CSW last year was such an incredible opportunity, getting to work with Zahra for the semester and really diving deep into a topic related to AAUW and something that had to do with the topic of last year's conference was just a really, really awesome opportunity. And I'm super excited for it again this year, which fingers crossed we get to go in person. But it was truly amazing.
Is there anything about your engagement with the United Nations work that has surprised you?
I would say I'm surprised by how much the little things can really contribute to the bigger picture. I remember at another UN trip I went to, they were I don't remember the exact title of the event, but it was they were just showing a bunch of different passion projects that a bunch of people had. And I remember there was one specifically that stood out to me because it was, I believe, a 13-year-old or 14-year-old that was presenting a fashion show. And she had her models just walking through the whole UN conference, debuting to all these ambassadors and professionals in the UN. And they were talking about how that work is so impactful to them and how it relates to their missions and how it relates to their goals. I believe it was the International Day of Peace. That was what it was. And how this one little project that this little girl had was making such a big impact on the world and at the United Nations. So it really shows that if you just pursue your passions, if you pursue what you're passionate about, it can make a bigger impact.
I love that. That's fascinating because we often don't focus on some of the things that one might consider to be, rather small, and understanding how they can have that broader impact. What about you, Kyra?
I guess just that people, no matter what their position is or where they're at, they're so happy to talk to you about what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, and you can bounce ideas off of them. You can get ideas from them. Like everyone is super open and kind and super passionate about the work that they're doing and just wants to contribute their ideas to what other people are doing.
Yeah, that's a great observation. So both of you mentioned a bit earlier about the work that you're doing to promote, AAUW's mission at Lehigh and in the local community, the UN program and the global work. Is there anything specific that you want to add to that about promoting AAUW's mission at Lehigh and in the local community?
I think our work with the new Lehigh branch has been really impactful. It's really interesting because when we were starting up the local chapter, there wasn't any sort of women's rights club or organization at Lehigh existing, which was really surprising and crazy to me because Lehigh has almost, I believe, 300 clubs. So there were different organizations dedicated to women, but no specifically for women's rights or advocating for women in general. So I immediately kind of was really sparked by that, and it really showed the need for an AAUW chapter at Lehigh. So that definitely is something that drives me in my work for the chapter.
Well, we certainly thank you for taking the initiative, right, to start that club and get it up and running. And it is quite interesting that in over 300 clubs that this wasn't, the focus of any of them. So making sure that it is on the front lines is really, really important as well. Anything to add, Kyra?
Yeah, I would just say that going off of our club as well, that I've definitely noticed that education is what equips youth with the knowledge and credibility when they go out into the world. And so when we get to educate them on the UN's SDGs and what the AUW stands for, they really understand how important it is to get involved with local NGOs and local community programs and get involved with practical experience where they are actually going to maybe pursue a degree in this field or decide to just get even more involved. And what we're getting to do for these girls is just opening them up to a whole new world, and it's super amazing to see and guide.
Yeah, and that's important because we are so interconnected as a society, and the fact that educating individuals, that there's a global impact in their own community and their other nonprofits, and there are reasons why we are working to elevate the work and the rights of women and girls, and to bring them to the forefront so that people have a deeper understanding of the importance of ensuring equity for all. And speaking of voices and youth voices, why do you think they are more important than ever at the UN and for the future of global gender equality?
Yeah, so I would say youth voices are especially important now because they bring a fresh perspective and creative solutions to longstanding problems. Especially like growing up in a digital age now, we're able to adapt to change and can leverage technology to raise awareness and mobilize support for gender equality initiatives. Um, and youth engagement fosters a cultural shift towards gender equity, promoting inclusivity with people all around the world. And especially through the UN, youth are able to nurture their leadership skills that are crucial for driving these changes that we're trying to see.
Absolutely. What about you, Zahra?
Yeah, I've really seen the impact of youth in talking with the local women of the other AUW branches around here, because a lot of them consist of older women, and they were so surprised and so um, just sparked by the idea that we were two young college girls trying to be passionate in this and trying to really make a change, because they spoke about how when they were our age, they wouldn't even think about these topics, or their peers would not even consider this being a main subject of conversation. So now they meet at their homes and they have these conversations, and they really consider it never to be too late. And it's really inspiring to see that. And they're also likewise inspired by us, seeing that the new generation is so passionate about these topics that they've taken years to overcome.
Yeah, and that is an excellent point, because we live in such a multi-generational society that the sharing of that information and the sharing of the different experiences based on generations, really is key. So I appreciate that, and that engagement, right? That a Gen Z can have with millennials or working with boomers. I mean, that demonstrates to us that we are all connected and that we do have an incredibly diverse society, and that we can actually all learn from each other. So I'm glad that you're having that kind of connection and impact. And so when you think about youth voices at the United Nations, are there any challenges or barriers that still face that young people still face in participating in the UN system?
Yes, there are many challenges with youth getting involved in the UN. I would say, first of all, there's just limited access to forums due to age restrictions. But also, I would say a large thing is that youth face tokenism, where they're included pretty much merely for appearance rather than genuine engagement. So even though the voices are heard, translating these voices into concrete policies or actions is super challenging.
Yeah, that's a very astute observation, because you don't want to just be there for a photo opportunity. I think that in general, one understands that the goal really is to include youth in these conversations, but it does need to be intentional, and it does need to be meaningful. Zahra?
Yeah, I really saw the struggles with my experience with UNA USA last year, because I remember talking to a lot of my peers who aren't youth representatives, and they felt really disconnected from the United Nations despite their partnership with Lehigh. They were saying things like, oh, like, we could never create a change there. That's too big of an organization. We're just college students. Like, we're just making a trip. It's kind of like just a field trip. There's really no impact that we could make. And it really just shows that disparity. But I've seen through UNA USA, through the AUW chapter, through the Youth Rep program, that these programs have really facilitated that connection in a way that some students might not be able to see yet. I've been fortunate enough to become part of these opportunities, but other students, I would urge other students to become involved as well, so they can see the change that they can make as well.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation, because when AAUW initially became engaged in the Youth Rep program, it really was to expand our engagement, and also to be in spaces where we didn't have members aged in the ages from 18 to 24, and we definitely were looking at also the way that we could expand our knowledge, and our voice in those spaces. And the youth representative, as well as, a girl advocate that we had for a number of years, really gave us that opportunity. And, we have certainly been gratified by the results and our ability to support you all, but also, our ability to also, learn from you and understand also how we can continue that connection at the United Nations and with Lehigh, and utilize it. You mentioned NICWSL, and to make sure that we are also working to broaden your engagement, with students from other campuses, right, who may not know about the work that Lehigh is doing in their connection to the United Nations. So that's important as well. Is there anything else that either of you would like to share or add about your work as a youth representative, or the program at Lehigh, or your engagement with the United Nations?
I would just reemphasize the importance of starting small, because I remember, like how you just mentioned NICWSL, a lot of the girls were discussing about how their schools didn't have an AUW chapter or even a regional chapter, and they felt like that they were lacking that, and they couldn't really become more involved other than the conference. And they were saying that they weren't sure what to do about that. And that really interested in me, because I've been part of the AUW for over a year now, and it's become such a big and impactful part of my life. So it was crazy to me to hear that these girls had come to this conference not even being a member or knowing about AUW beforehand. So I would say just becoming passionate about those subjects and really just taking initiative, like you said. Just making, even if it's not an AUW chapter, just becoming involved in whatever gender equity clubs there are on campus, or participating in fundraiser, participating in drives, participating in any way you can in general, because that step of initiative, I feel like, is probably the hardest step to take, that first step. And once you get started, you can really see the impact and change that is possible.
Excellent. Those are great observations. Kyra?
I guess I would just have to say that educating yourself on either just everything that's going on or all of the possibilities and ways to get involved is super important. Education really does open doors at any age, just getting involved in a topic that you're interested in, even if it's not gender equality, just getting involved and doing your research and realizing that the issue is there and that something has to be done about it.
Yeah, and I think that finding out, what your passion is certainly a great motivator to not just learning about it, but also learning how you can have an impact, or learning what you can do to, have an impact on the change that could potentially, right, bring solutions, and who you can connect to as well. So those are really great observations. So moving on to a few of the questions that came in. The first one, as a UN representative, what are your priorities during your tenure, and how can AAUW branches help you accomplish these priorities? Okay, so I'll start. I'm gonna answer that question from the national perspective, and then I'm gonna ask each of you to talk about what your priorities might be as a youth rep. And so from the national perspective, we are looking at our UN work through the lens of our public policy priorities, and that includes gender equality, quality education, and decent work for all. Those are the SDGs that we tend to focus on because, as we mentioned, there are so many barriers that still keep access to education, women's economic security, and leadership out of reach of millions of women and girls around the world. And we do focus on the 2030 agenda and those specific SDGs. We also do quite a bit of priorities are on advocacy on global issues that are impacting girls and young women. The branches, you can join AAUW or have your own activities around, key dates like International Youth Day and the International Day of the Girl, the International Day of Girls and Women in Science. And also, when you are doing your own branch level work, consider how you can meaningfully include or center youth or youth voices in the work that you are doing. Okay, so Zahra and Kyra, what do you think are your priorities as a youth rep?
I know for me, as my job as a youth rep, I really see it as three categories of the AAUW, Lehigh University, and the United Nations. And I really look to combine the missions of all three wherever applicable and kind of just bring over those ideas from each of them. So, for example, last fall, Gloria came and visited Lehigh, and we hosted a panel for her. And that was a great way for us to bring AUW to campus. And that was before we had even established the chapter at Lehigh. So really no one knew what AUW was. And there we had the CEO present. So that was really great for us to establish AUW's name on campus and bring its missions to us here on campus. And then also just whenever we visit the UN, we are representing AUW as their youth representatives, and we are able to introduce ourselves as that, and being able to engage in conversations with others and establish that name as well. So that's another way we're able to overlap these different connections. So I really look to do that wherever I can.
It's really great, and we appreciate the knowledge that you have gained just in learning more about AAUW and your ability really to be, an ambassador for the organization. So there's another question around, there are a couple of questions around food insecurity, food production. And I'm wondering, Kyra, since I know that you did some work in Sierra Leone, if you could just elaborate a bit on the work that you were working on while you were there and how it connects to food insecurity.
Yeah, so my project that I went to Sierra Leone for was based on malnutrition, where my professor and I, it was with the biochemistry professor at Lehigh. She worked with me and a group of a few other students to kind of look at the food production process in Western Africa, and we uh, took surveys and figured out the main foods that were consumed in the area. And then from there, we looked at their nutritional values, where we found that pretty much every food that they had no nutrition in it, just because they aren't able, they just, because they don't have electricity or refrigeration or anything, they aren't really able to keep meats. They aren't able to like make many foods, so everything is very basic. And so nothing really had any nutritional value. So what we worked on was trying to take their traditional recipes and food, but kind of engineer it to have a nutritional twist. So we had to figure out how to get a mineral or nutrient supplier from the US to Sierra Leone, which there we worked with a bunch of local bakeries to produce recipes that would have nutrient dense, like muffins or porridge or bouillon cubes, which is another huge thing there. And so we worked with a ton of local people. We did a bunch of taste testing. We did a ton of like scrapping and rewriting recipes until we found an affordable, nutritious, and just like easy to make common product that we could start getting into bakeries that would replace their old products, but still be okay for the environment, be economically sufficient, be just like check off all the boxes pretty much. And that was what I did there.
So at the end of the day, what did you learn from that experience overall?
Yeah, well, one thing I found very interesting, it's kind of a side note, but they over there, they have no concept of what nutrition actually is, which was really interesting. They didn't know that what they were eating didn't have like protein or just any sort of nutrients like that. It was just carbs. And it is hard because just getting food in the first place is what they're going after, because not everyone can afford it. So we really had to deal with finding a way to get super, super cheap products that were still nutrient dense. And just being over there was incredible. Meeting all the people, seeing how they lived was amazing. And just getting to work with everyone, especially seeing the gender dynamics between women and men in the households was also super interesting. But I definitely I learned like in every realm about lots of different things.
That's really great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think that, as someone, I started my international career as a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa, and so I've traveled throughout the continent. And you're right, there's just so much to learn, so much to appreciate. And when you have the opportunity, right, to work directly with individuals and, sort of center it on their particular experience, that's going to be the most beneficial for them, and not come in with a layer of, we all know what's best, right? Working collaboratively is really the best approach. So I'm glad that you had that very positive and impactful experience in Sierra Leone. Before I move to the next question, I wanted to mention there's a comment regarding NGO CSW, which we know for the past few years has been both in-person and virtual, which is great because it has allowed greater access, both domestically and globally, to the workshops and to folks' ability to participate. Mentioning that anyone can attend NGO CSW, that the registration is open. We know, we just got the email for CSW 668. for organizations, we have the capacity to register individuals who would like to attend CSW in person. I'm actually the focal point for AAUW. And, it really gives you access to the meetings, and that there's always something going on at the UN, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person, and that there's so much value that you can get from these experiences, whether it's in person, whether it's virtual, they're really equally valuable. And there's just an opportunity to learn so much and be in a very incredibly dynamic space with individuals from, around the world, and those who are engaged globally, here within our own borders is really fascinating. So I appreciate the comment to elevate NGO CSW, because we are all getting ready. AAUW, we submitted our written statement already for CSW 68, and we're working on developing our parallel event, which next year, once again, we'll have one with our youth representatives and also with our amazing AAUW fellowships and grants, current fellows and alumni as well. Another question is around, thank you, Kalina, for dropping that information. Another question around gender equity and how it can foster peace and non-military solutions to global and domestic conflicts, which is a very good question, because we know that military conflicts have a disproportionate impact on women and girls. Gender equity can really address the root causes of violence, because gender equity promotes inclusivity, it promotes women's participation in decision-making, and gender equity really challenges traditional norms, right, that can lead to conflict. So that's definitely one way that it can foster peace and non-military solutions to conflict. Gender equity also ensures that women have a seat at the table. It is important because peace negotiations and conflict resolution processes, we know, are vital in including the perspectives of women in those conversations. Women have historically played a very tremendous role in peace-building efforts at the community level in particular. And gender equity really it's important because it addresses the root causes of violence, poverty, inequality, and discrimination, which we all know disproportionately impact women. And unfortunately, that, focusing on gender equity really does also focus on reducing gender-based violence, which is also often used as a weapon of war and conflict. So it also finally just reinforces the principles of human rights, and the rule of law. And these principles are really fundamental for promoting peace within our world. So that was a very good question and comment around, why is gender equity important, and why is the promotion of it impactful on ensuring that we are working towards a more peaceful society and a more peaceful world. And I don't see any additional questions. Kyra and Zahra and Elena, what's a final thought you would like for anyone listening and participating today to know about your experience as a youth rep, or anything that you could challenge them to get engaged in if they have an interest in global gender equity? Start with Elena.
Thank you, Gloria. So I do have a challenge for the participants, especially those of you who work with the youth. In my role, I would say one of the key components of the Youth Rep program for me is to make sure that we encourage young people to go out of their comfort zone. And Zahra and Kyra both touched on that, and the fact that, your first opportunity where you're presenting at the UN or engaging at the UN in any significant level is very intimidating. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing. And I think that once, what I'm seeing is that once the youth representatives go through that first intimidating experience, they become even more empowered by the difference that they are making and by the fact that they are able to accomplish the goals that they had for that specific experience. So I would challenge those of you who work with the youth to also try and identify opportunities that might be, slightly outside of the reach of the comfort of the youth that you're working with. And similarly, those of you on the call who are young people and maybe don't play as much of a role in the global change making and improving gender equity as you would like to, I would encourage you to look out for opportunities to push yourself out of the comfort zone as well. Intimidating as that might be, it's very powerful experience, and I'm sure that once you see the results, once you start seeing the results, you would be prompted to do that even more.
Thanks, Elena. That's great. Challenging yourself and how it can lead to growth. That's powerful advice for sure. Appreciate that. Zahra?
Yeah, I would add that as part of the youth representative program, I've been able to learn a lot about issues that I otherwise wouldn't have known about. The AUW is an American NGO, but most of the NGOs as in the youth rep program aren't. So we're hearing all about these issues in countries that I hadn't been familiar with previously. Like just a few weeks ago, we attended a lunch meeting with the CEO of an NGO called Widow, and they were talking about the importance of widows in Africa and how they have been dealing with many disparities economically. And that was something that I just didn't even hear about previously. And then all of a sudden I'm in the room with a speaker that has dedicated her life to that issue. So it's really so inspiring to hear about these issues, hearing these passions that people have, and just being invested in those really makes a difference.
Excellent. Yeah, the wealth of knowledge that you can be exposed to is quite tremendous, and I think that taking advantage of those opportunities can really be life changing. So I'm glad you had the opportunity to have that experience. Kyra?
Yeah, I would just say that getting involved with gender equality doesn't just strictly benefit women and girls, but it benefits everyone. It leads to happier families with positive role models and equal economic opportunities. And it leads to stronger communities in general where there's diverse perspectives. And it also just leads to a more just society where there's legal and social equity, and there's reduced violence and discrimination, and there's just human rights advancement in general.
Thank you all. That's a great observation, Kyra. And thank you all, Elena, Kyra, and Zahra. Thank you so much for being a partner with AAUW. Thank you so much for sharing your insights this afternoon, your knowledge, and of course, your time with us. I know that as students, you have a lot going on and you have a lot on your plate. So we appreciate you taking the time out to share your experience with our participants. We really do value our partnership with Lehigh University, and we just thank you so much for the benefits that we have we both received from that partnership. As I mentioned earlier, just want to remind everyone that the recording will be posted on the AAUW website in the next week or so. I also want to thank the AAUW staff who supported this webinar this afternoon. And to end just by saying that AAUW is really proud to empower the voices of our youth and to support the ability of young people to have a positive impact on their communities around the world, because young people are our future. We invite everyone to check out our global webpage, our social media, and AAUW events, and encourage members and our advocates to uplift the work of our youth reps and seek out opportunities to engage locally and globally. So thank you all very much. We appreciate your participation.